Kraven the Hunter has now officially been released in theaters, and with it being out for the public to consume and enjoy, it is time for us to go full spoilers. And that's exactly what I'll be doing here for you guys. I'll be giving you my spoiler review for Kraven the Hunter, diving into some of the Spider-Man Easter eggs that this movie has, because there's surprisingly a lot, the biggest mistakes this movie makes, any positives we can think of, and what at all they were trying to set up for a sequel I bet you is no longer happening. But it's not just gonna be about my opinion. I've already gotten some people in my spoiler-free review telling me that they enjoyed the movie, they had fun. And to those people, hey, I'm happy for you. I'm glad you got some enjoyment out of this. I actually got some enjoyment too, just not in the way the movie I think was intended. As well as hitting that subscribe button. But okay, kicking things off here, I already said, I tried going in thinking this would at least be entertaining because of the R rating and it would have violent, bloody action sequences. And while those are for sure the funnest part of this movie, everything else about the film just brought it down to where I could not believe some of the stuff I was watching. Like, it's amazing. If you go and watch all my spoiler reviews for Morbius, Madam Web, or Venom, Sony brings out this like madman crash out demon in me that gets so angry because I just could not believe the things I was watching. So let's start with the beginning of this movie, because they released those 8 minutes of the film, and you know what? Those 8 minutes are suitable. I can understand why they thought, hey, let's put this out there, maybe it'll convince some people to buy a ticket. Because we have Kraven voluntarily putting himself in a prison just so that he can get close to a criminal he wants to kill. And I mean, just that kind of confidence that you can put yourself in prison, you're gonna do a job, and you're gonna be able to escape no problem. I mean, that's a badass character trait, but Sony never fails to let us down, because right after those 8 minutes, we immediately go into a flashback origin story for young Kraven the Hunter. And we saw this coming. We saw little snippets in the trailer. We knew there'd be little moments. I did not know it'd be about 25 minutes of young Kraven the Hunter. And in these flashbacks, we learn that Kraven really isn't raised like in a jungle setting or constantly going out and testing his instincts in the wild. No, he went to school in New York, doesn't have the Russian accent. I'm thinking they were trying to avoid Aaron Taylor Johnson sounding a little similar to Pietro. Not saying that is a Russian accent, but actors only have so much range. And well, Russell Crowe comes in to pick up his two sons, Kraven and Dimitri, letting them know that their mother has committed suicide. And instead of offering condolences and saying, hey, sorry, I don't know what to tell you, he instead insults the boys by calling the mother weak and says, we need to make this up by going hunting. And honestly, that was kind of the funniest part about Kraven the Hunter, because although in the comics, Kraven also has an abusive father, elements of Russell Crowe felt like he was just being the actual Kraven the Hunter we know to be. Ruthless, all about masculinity, improving they're the best, hunting animals, not showing any signs of weakness. Like, I was like, if this was 20 years ago, Russell Crowe would be a perfect Kraven the Hunter against like Tobey Maguire. But because the characters are so one-dimensional and the dialogue is just awful in this movie, Russell Crowe ends up coming off like a guy who just listens to a lot of red pill podcasts. You know what kind of podcasts I'm talking about, because that's all just he was regurgitating. I mean, we never even get to elaborate what his business is in this movie. He just goes, you know my business, then you know you can't show weakness. I'm starting to think he isn't a mob boss. He probably has his own red pill podcast. So what we do is we kill the lion. And when we kill the lion, we prove we're superior man. But now a word from our sponsors. Manscaped. Shave your balls with this. This video isn't sponsored by Manscaped, by the way, but hey, I'm open to it. But he does decide to take the boys hunting, and you know what? There is one moment as they're going out hunting for these lions and whatnot to celebrate the mom's death. Young Kraven actually does drop a nugget of wisdom that I was like, that is actually a Kraven characteristic, and I like that the movie did that. Like, he points out, this isn't hunting, us with guns going up against animals. What kind of honor is there in that type of hunting? If you really wanted to prove your superiority, you would take on a lion with your own two hands. And I was like, okay, that is actually something Kraven would definitely believe in. But young Kraven doesn't have it in him to kill an innocent animal. If anything, he loves animals in this movie. Gets attacked by one and was just ready to let his son die, just like his wife. A guy was just probably thinking, One less host for my podcast. But thankfully, also at the same time, we have young Calypso, who is on a safari trip with her parents. This is also the funniest thing about Kraven the Hunter. You have characters where their kind of origin or birthplace is this jungle desert-like setting. In the comics, they're usually spending most of their time there, but in this movie, they're like, we'll just take them on one hunting trip. The boys will actually be raised in a prep school in New York, and Calypso will just be on this random safari trip one time, but she's gonna get another New York education and become a very profitable lawyer. Just stripping away things that make these characters who they are so that they can fit this weird movie. But her grandma hands her a potion, which is part of the comics. Kraven gets his power sometimes by taking a potion, so I didn't mind that. And as he's taking it, the blood of the lion also mixes in with this potion, and this is the explanation for how he has kind of an animal's intuition. In earlier trailers, it made it look and sound like Kraven's abilities were way more connected to animals, to where like he could see through a bird in the sky, he can control a wolf to fight you. But in this version of the movie, they kind of minimize those to where you just kind of assume he kind of swayed an animal to go one way or another. That's then where Kraven decides, you know, I've had enough. I'm leaving my father, leaving my brother who I love behind, and he's gonna go live in this piece of land that used to belong to his mom. And that's where we got this entire montage of him learning his powers, running with buffaloes. It reminded me a lot of Tobey Maguire when he got his Spider-Man powers and he's just running around excited that he's now kind of a superhero. Except with Kraven, it ends with him brutally killing 2 poachers. And this is also where I totally get people who were having a good time with this version of Kraven and what they did with Aaron Taylor Johnson, because he's a charismatic guy. He's very likable. Even with the bad material he was given, Aaron Taylor Johnson made it work. And when he's not doing these awesome chase sequences throughout the film where he's like taking down entire cars, punching on windows that are bulletproof, climbing up buildings, the other things they do to where they show how his powers are useful when he like enters a club and a lady walks by and he goes, hey, I like your perfume. And she goes, oh, I'm actually not wearing perfume. And so it's the husband next to her wearing ladies' perfume, meaning he's cheated. And Kraven just goes, hey, sorry, man. She was going to find out eventually. See ya. It was just a random little detail like that where you go, man, if I had those powers, I could do a lot. So they do a good job of making you want the powers Kraven has and how he feels like a very invincible character. But it just sucks. Those action scenes are far and few in between. A lot of it is just stuff we don't care about. So he has become a hunter his life, and he's this myth and urban legend that he goes after criminals. He's not only good at getting people on the list, he's good at tracking down anybody. And they show you that because all he had to go off of with finding Calypso was a tarot card. And after like 20 years, he finally has found Calypso, which I also thought was like, why only now? Like, you made it sound like you've been doing this for so long. How have you only found her now? And all of this leads us into like the halfway point of the movie, and we still don't have like an actual plot or an urgency to keep things going. But that's until finally Kraven's brother Dimitri gets kidnapped by the Rhino because he's afraid he'll eventually end up on Kraven's list and would rather just take him out now. So this is also where I want to talk about these Spider-Man characters and Easter eggs that they included that are just all over the place. Starting off like with Kraven, before we get to the things that he does at the end of the movie, the whole time I'm watching this film, I'm like, this Kraven is honestly a really nice guy. He's basically the Punisher. He has a moral code, and so knowing this is supposed to be a Spider-Man villain, and in some fantasy imaginative world, Sony plans to someday have these guys meet, even though we know that's not happening. I'm thinking, watching this movie, going, why would he ever want to fight Spider-Man? And oh, we get a scene where Kraven eventually gets hit with this toxin. And one of the first stages of this toxin is it reveals your greatest fear. And Kraven's greatest fear is spiders. Spiders. What? What? So one day he'll just see Spider-Man on the news and go, oh, and decide it's time to go hunting. What kind of dumb Easter egg level of setup is that? Like, how is that supposed to mean anything? Then we have this character that I feel like you could have almost removed them entirely from the movie and they just wouldn't really have made a difference. And that's Christopher Abbott playing a character named the Foreigner, which is another villain in Spider-Man comics. He's not a very well-known one, but he does exist. He's supposed to be a soldier who's at the peak of human level performance, and he doesn't really have any superpowers, but in the comics, he has found a way to hypnotize his opponents, which gives him the upper hand when taking them down. And well, they try implementing that into the movie in the most hilarious, dumb way possible. He'll go up to somebody and then start counting down from 3. 1, 2, 3. And because the person he was going after is in this hypnotic trance, it makes it appear like he's a speedster, like he has these superhuman fast abilities when you're just kind of hypnotized. And he just shows up when he wants to. And his only motive is that a long time ago, Kraven killed his mentor. And so he just kind of wants revenge and is willing to work with the Rhino for it. But I could not help but to laugh every time in the movie he just goes, 1, 2. It was the movie trying to make something look cool, and it just looks so stupid. It's even funnier that he's the closest one out of all the Spider-Man villains in this movie to actually be a real opponent for Kraven, to where Kraven almost dies, but that whole battle takes place in a jungle with like Kraven in his full attire and him just in a cashmere sweater. It was the most awkward thing, but he takes an arrow to the face thanks to Calypso. Honestly, hilarious way to die. So that was just a waste of a Spider-Man character thrown in here. When we get on to Rhino, I said it, Alessandro Navallo, who plays Rhino, he was honestly the one having the most fun with this awful script, awful dialogue. There's a point where they start talking about, the Hunter is out there, he killed our people, and he just decides to go, Kraven the Hunter, the sneaky man, the guy who will get you in your dreams. It's the stupidest thing. And there's another part in the movie, no explanation. We went from one scene, we cut to him at his desk going, gah, gah. And I busted out laughing in my theater, and I only had like 12 people in there. I laughed a little too hard at that, but it just made no sense. We were in one scene, then we cut to him going, ah, ah. And there's no reason why. He just did it. But okay, he was part of the young Kraven flashbacks. He was really trying to get the respect and honor of Kraven's father. But because he has like asthma and this condition, his father always saw him as weak and never wanted to do business with him. That's haunted him all this time. And well, he escalated his condition by working with a doctor named Miles Warren, who in the comics is another Spider-Man villain known as the Jackal. We never get to see this doctor or Jackal, but you can for sure bet that his name was brought up and being set up so that if they do a sequel, they can expand and do something more with these Spider-Man characters. And well, he helped him make this medicine and formula that keeps him human, but when he takes it off, he transforms into a rhino, giving him rock-hard skin. And this is now where we need to give Paul Giamatti's Rhino an apology, because he is now officially the second worst Rhino that has ever been out there. This Rhino, what the heck? Not only was the CGI on the face so terrible, in full Rhino form, this guy isn't actually even that big. When he's fighting against Kraven the Hunter, and in these moments, Rhino is a lot smaller than I thought. The Rhino's only about like a foot taller than Kraven. That fight lasts about like 5-10 minutes, and Kraven is able to defeat him by sticking a metal pipe in the tube where he puts his medicine, and the camera zooms in on him dying as he's de-transforming back into a human form. And again, the CGI is just so laughably bad. You can't help but to take this moment in as so cringy. I'm still so curious then, who was supposed to be the main villain or the main antagonist throughout the movie? Because we had heard that is the reason they delayed this movie an entire year and didn't release it back in October of 2023, is because they added in all these Rhino reshoots, that final battle, and like Rhino is really the main bad guy. So if he was only supposed to be a tease for the next movie, who was the main bad guy? Was it the Foreigner? Was it supposed to be Russell Crowe the whole time? What was the last battle of this movie gonna look like? Was it just supposed to be that fight between him and the Foreigner? Because yeah, I can see how that would have been so disappointing. But then the last Spider-Man character that is teased and is actually the setup for Kraven 2 is Kraven's brother Dimitri, aka the Chameleon. Now, the funniest part about the dialogue and everything that goes on in Kraven is they are not subtle at all. They're like, he's the Hunter. Do you want to know why they call me the Rhino? He changes his voice like a chameleon. Oh my, like they just straight up name drop the villain names like it's so clever. But the first time we get a hint of these chameleon powers is when they're older, he's at a club and he's singing a Harry Styles song. Like that took me back that we are in a Kraven the Hunter movie and Harry Styles is playing, and I'm over there watching the movie going, dude, he sounds a lot like Harry Styles. And then he changes to another artist and I'm like, oh dude, he sounds a lot like that artist. And I'm like, oh, I see what they're doing. He's very good at changing his voice like the chameleon. And let me tell you, I think the chameleon in the comics is such a cool, underrated character. He's someone that I would love to see someday in a live-action Spider-Man movie. And don't you dare bring up the one guy named Dimitri in Spider-Man Far From Home. Chris, you know he was supposed to be the chameleon. Hey, he wasn't the chameleon then, and he's not the chameleon now. So let's drop that. But I think he's someone that I would love to see in an actual Spider-Man movie. And so throughout the whole course of the movie, he's the wimpy younger brother. He's the one that the dad, Russell Crowe, is embarrassed of, but Kraven always loves him and he bonds with him. And I did kind of like that relationship between them. Whenever he gets kidnapped and Kraven has to go save them, I did feel bad for him. They cut off his finger, they torture him, all this bad stuff. I was like, Kraven, go get your brother. But by the end of the movie, when everything's said and done and all the villains are gone and someone needs to take over the Kraven family business, Dimitri steps up and Kraven tells him, you know I'm gonna have to come for you, right? You know I can't allow you to do this. Which to me did feel like a 180 turn of out of nowhere him just kind of going evil. But the biggest cherry on top is because he was in the room whenever Rhino was telling him about this miracle doctor, Miles Warren, he visited that doctor and helped him have an unorthodox operation. And we get this like really hilarious, laughable shot of Dimitri turning into Aaron Taylor Johnson, but he's an entire foot shorter staring at his older brother, and it is just meme material. But he walks away and we get revealed the mask from the comics, and I'm not gonna lie, that actually did look badass. That's one of the things I also hate about these Sony movies. Aside from Madam Web's, I think the costumes and look of these Sony Spider-Man spin-off movies actually look pretty dang good. Morbius looked good. Venom looks fantastic, just needs that white spider on his chest. Kraven, when he finally wears his vest in the last second of this movie, and these two shots in the trailer are not in the film at all. And that mask of the chameleon also looked pretty badass, but that's all we're ever gonna see of that. I doubt we're actually gonna get a sequel where Kraven would fight off against his brother. Is there a version of me that kind of would have liked to have seen that? Maybe, but it would have only have just been in the interest to see what kind of other laughable, crazy memes they could have come up with. Because they do say in the movie, I think there's an animal in all of us. Kind of setting up the theme that if they continued this film on, Kraven's villains would continue being other Spider-Man villains, but that are animal themed. Kind of like probably Scorpion. Instead of a guy in a mechanical costume, he'd probably be a mutated scorpion guy. He could honestly fight Dr. Octopus one day. I guess Morbius possibly is on the agenda. He's a mutated bat creature. And so that kind of would have been the theme going forward with these movies, is Kraven just chasing down Spider-Man villains that have like an animal-like power. It was honestly just nonsense, the movie. And you know, the part that makes me the most mad is they have such iconic characters all attached in this movie. Rhino, Kraven, Chameleon, genuine Spider-Man villains that I have liked since I was a kid and would love to see in an actual Spider-Man movie fighting against Spider-Man are now off the table and cannot be used because Sony would rather make a 9% Rotten Tomato movie on them. You guys might have seen the original plan for Spider-Man 3 with Tom Holland was to have him go up against Kraven the Hunter. That's if they couldn't get Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to agree to come back for No Way Home. That was going to be the idea for the movie. And dude, even though I love what No Way Home was, I still want a Kraven movie. I still want a decent Rhino. Chameleon thrown in there would be awesome. But now this is like the first exposure to a lot of audience member of who these characters are. And now when they finally do make a Kraven movie, I don't know why they'd be excited for it when this is what they have to go off of why they should care. Let's hope in these next 3 years, while Sony is taking a pause on these spin-offs, they can make much better movies, because if not, man, I'm not ready to keep sitting through more of these. But I'll do it for you guys. Let me know your opinion on Kraven the Hunter, what you like, what you didn't like. Do you actually think we're going to get a sequel? Any Easter eggs or details you caught that I might have missed? Anything and everything, be sure and like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 3C Films or on TikTok at 3C Films. But as always, I'm Chris. Take care.